The evening at Il Giardino seemed to have been designed by fate itself to feel like a turning point, a rare and fragile alignment of timing, emotion, and courage. The restaurant glowed with an inviting warmth, its golden lights reflecting off glassware and polished wood, creating an atmosphere that felt almost suspended outside of reality. Conversations flowed easily around them, laughter rising and falling in gentle waves, and for once, the world beyond those walls felt distant, irrelevant. For Deacon and Taylor, this was not just another dinner. It was a moment they had chosen deliberately, a quiet declaration that they were no longer willing to hide, no longer willing to allow the weight of others' expectations to dictate the shape of their lives. Taylor felt at the moment she stepped inside, the shift, subtle but undeniable, as though she had crossed into a space where she could finally breathe without restraint. There had been so many obstacles, so many voices raised in opposition, so many warnings about what this relationship could cost her. But standing here now, none of that seemed as powerful as the quiet certainty building inside her. She had spent so much of her life choosing caution, choosing stability, choosing the path that others believed was right. And yet, that path had never truly led her to peace. What she felt with Deacon was not simple, not safe, but it was real in a way that refused to be dismissed. Across from her, Deacon carried a similar awareness, though his expression held a deeper edge of disbelief. He had never expected to reach this point, never imagined that someone like Taylor would not only see him, but choose him fully and without reservation. The weight of his past had followed him for so long that it had become part of his identity, something he believed could never truly be escaped. And yet here he was, sitting across from a woman who looked at him not as a mistake to be corrected, but as a possibility worth believing in. It unsettled him, not because he doubted her, but because he was still learning how to believe in himself. They spoke quietly at first, their voices blending into the rhythm of the restaurant, but there was an undercurrent to their conversation that set it apart. They were not simply sharing thoughts. They were building something, shaping a future with words that carried weight beyond the moment. When Deacon reached for his glass and lifted it slightly, the gesture felt both simple and significant, a small act that marked something far greater. He spoke of beginnings, of second chances, of the possibility that life did not have to be defined by the worst decisions one had ever made. His voice held a steadiness that came not from certainty, but from intention. He was choosing this, choosing her, choosing to believe that despite everything, something good could still come from the chaos that had defined his past. Taylor met his gaze, her own glass raised, her expression soft but resolute. She understood what this meant, not just for him, but for herself. This was not a passive moment. It was a choice, one that would ripple outward, affecting relationships, expectations, and the delicate balance she had maintained for so long. But for once, she did not feel the need to retreat from that reality. Instead, she embraced it, allowing herself to exist fully in the moment without apology. Their glasses touched, a quiet sound, almost lost in the ambient noise, but to them, it felt like something far more profound. A promise, a declaration, a step forward, and then everything shifted. It began with a change in the atmosphere, subtle but immediate, as though the room itself had sensed something approaching. Conversations faltered, eyes turning instinctively toward the entrance as the door opened. The light from outside cut briefly into the warm interior, creating a sharp contrast that drew attention before anything else. The woman who stepped inside did not hesitate. She moved with purpose, her presence commanding attention in a way that felt deliberate rather than accidental. There was no uncertainty in her posture, no indication that she questioned whether she belonged there. And beside her, slightly behind, was the child. Small, quiet, observant. The contrast between them was striking, yet it was the connection that mattered. The way the woman's hand rested lightly on the child's shoulder, as if guiding her forward into something neither of them could fully escape. Deacon felt it before he understood it. A tension in his chest, sudden and inexplicable, as though something long buried had just shifted beneath the surface. His eyes locked onto the pair as they moved closer, his mind searching for recognition, for context, for anything that could explain the unease growing inside him. Taylor followed his gaze, her own expression tightening slightly, her instincts alerting her to the shift even before she knew its cause. The woman stopped at their table, and for a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and deliberate, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. The restaurant, once filled with warmth and ease, now held something entirely different, a tension that fell sharp enough to cut through even the most distant conversations. When the woman finally spoke, her voice was calm. Too calm. It carried no hesitation, no uncertainty, as though she had rehearsed this moment, as though every word had been chosen carefully long before she stepped through that door. She did not introduce herself immediately. She did not soften the impact of what she was about to say. Instead, she delivered it with precision. The child was Deacon's. The words did not land all at once. They fractured the moment, breaking it into pieces that refused to settle into anything coherent. Deacon's mind rejected it instantly, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, his body reacting before his thoughts could fully form. It was impossible. It had to be. And yet, something in the woman's certainty, in the way she held herself, made it difficult to dismiss outright. Taylor did not move. Her gaze shifted from Deacon to the child, then back again, her mind racing to process a reality that had just been thrust upon her without warning. There was no immediate anger, no outburst, only a growing sense of disorientation, as though the ground beneath her had shifted in a way she could not yet understand. The woman continued, and with each word, the situation deepened. This was not just about a child. It was about connection, lineage, a thread that tied this moment to something far more dangerous than a hidden past. The child, she explained, was not just Deacon's daughter. She was Sheila's granddaughter. The name cut through the room with a force that changed everything. Because Sheila was not just a part of their past. She was a constant presence, a shadow that lingered even when she was not physically there, shaping events in ways that were never immediately visible, but always deeply felt. And now, through this child, she had found a new way in. Deacon's reaction was immediate, though not explosive. It was quieter, more unsettling, as though his entire sense of reality had been pulled out from under him. His thoughts collided, fragmented, each one struggling to find a place within a narrative that no longer made sense. He looked at the child again, searching for something, recognition, resemblance, proof, but all he found was uncertainty. Taylor saw it, and in that moment, something inside her began to break. Not because of the possibility that Deacon had a past he had not fully revealed, but because of what this meant for their future. The hope they had just embraced, the fragile sense of beginning they had allowed themselves to believe in. It all felt suddenly unstable, threatened by something that had been set in motion long before they ever reached this point. Around them, the restaurant had fallen into complete silence. Every eye fixed on the unfolding scene, every breath held in anticipation of what would come next. The woman's final revelation did not come with raised volume or dramatic emphasis. It did not need to. She spoke of Sheila's involvement, of the years of quiet observation, of the deliberate decision to keep this child hidden until the moment was right. This was not coincidence. It was strategy. A long game, played with patience and precision, designed to strike at the exact point where it would cause the most damage. Taylor understood immediately. This was not just disruption. This was destruction, and she was standing at the center of it. Her gaze lingered on the child for a moment longer, her heart pulling in conflicting directions. Compassion for the innocence in front of her, fear of what that innocence represented, and the overwhelming realization that the life she had just begun to envision was already slipping out of reach. She turned back to Deacon, searching his face for something, clarity, denial, anything that could ground her. But he had none to give. He stood there, caught in the same storm, unable to offer answers he did not have, unable to restore a moment that had already been broken beyond repair. And in that silence, in that shared uncertainty, Taylor made her decision. Not out of anger, not out of judgment, but out of survival. She stepped back. The movement was small, almost imperceptible, but it carried the weight of everything that had just changed. Her expression shifted, the warmth that had defined it moments before replaced by something far more distant, far more guarded. She did not speak, because there were no words that could capture what she was feeling. Instead, she turned and walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last, the sound of her departure echoing in a space that had once felt safe, now irrevocably altered. Behind her, the silence remained, thick and unbroken, as Deacon stood frozen, the reality of what had just happened settling into him with devastating clarity. The beginning they had chosen, the future they had dared to imagine, gone, replaced by something far more complicated, far more dangerous. And somewhere, unseen but ever-present, the architect of this moment watched with quiet satisfaction. Because the plan had worked, and the damage had only just begun. The silence Taylor left behind did not dissipate when the door of Il Giardino closed behind her. It lingered, thick and suffocating, clinging to every surface as though the room itself understood that something irreversible had just taken place. Conversations did not resume immediately. No one reached for their glasses or attempted to restore the illusion of normalcy. Instead, there was only stillness, broken only by the faint, uneven breathing of those who had just witnessed a moment that would not be easily forgotten. Deacon remained where he was, his body rigid, his mind struggling to reconstruct a reality that had just been torn apart in front of him. The woman still stood nearby, her posture unchanged, her presence as deliberate as it had been when she first entered. The child, quiet and observant, clung to her side, unaware of the full weight of the moment, yet undeniably at its center. Everything about the scene felt wrong, not because it was chaotic, but because it was too precise, too controlled, as though it had been orchestrated with a level of patience that made it far more dangerous than any impulsive confrontation. Deacon's thoughts moved in fragments, each one colliding with the next without forming anything coherent. The possibility that the child could be his did not immediately register as truth or lie. It existed somewhere in between, suspended in a space where logic could not yet reach. What he did recognize, with growing clarity, was the structure of the situation itself. This was not just an accusation. It was a reveal, timed, calculated, designed to arrive at the exact moment it would cause the most damage. And that realization led him to one unavoidable conclusion. Sheila. But even that did not fully explain it. Sheila thrived on diaos, on emotional disruption, on visile reactions. This felt different. This felt patient, layered, as though it had been built over time rather than unleashed in a single, explosive act. It suggested not just her influence, but evolution. A shift in method that made her more dangerous than ever before. The woman spoke again, breaking the silence not with aggression, but with quiet insistence. She did not raise her voice, did not attempt to dominate the room. Instead, she allowed the weight of what she had already said to linger, adding details slowly, carefully, as if guiding the narrative in a direction she had already chosen. She spoke of the past, not as something distant, but as something that had remained active, hidden, waiting. Her connection to Deacon was framed not as a coincidence, but as something inevitable, something that had been kept out of sight until it could no longer be ignored. And then she said something that shifted the tension into something far more dangerous. Sheila had not just known about the child. She had been part of her life. The implication landed with a force that rippled through the room, transforming confusion into something sharper, more focused. This was not just about a hidden daughter. This was about lineage, about connection, about the deliberate intertwining of lives in a way that ensured no one involved could simply walk away unaffected. Deacon felt it settle into him, cold and undeniable. This was a trap. not in the sense of immediate danger, but in the way it had been constructed to pull him back into something he had been trying to escape. No matter how much he had tried to distance himself, no matter how carefully he had attempted to rebuild his life, Sheila had found a way to reach him again. Not through force, not through confrontation, through blood. Across the room, the murmurs began to rise, quiet at first, then building as the shock gave way to speculation. Eyes moved between Deacon, the woman, and the child, searching for resemblance, for confirmation, for anything that could transform the situation from possibility into certainty. But certainty did not come easily. It lingered just out of reach, forcing everyone present to remain suspended in uncertainty. Deacon finally moved. It was not a dramatic action, not a confrontation or an outburst. It was slower, more deliberate, as though he were grounding himself in something tangible before taking the next step. His gaze shifted to the child, really looking at her now, searching for something beyond the surface. There were features that could align, details that could suggest connection, but nothing that could confirm it beyond doubt. And that uncertainty only deepened the tension. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, but carrying an edge that had not been there before. The question was not about the child. It was about intent. The woman did not hesitate in her response. She spoke of responsibility, of truth, of the need to acknowledge what had been hidden. But beneath those words, there was something else, something less about resolution and more about exposure. This was not a quiet revelation meant to be handled privately. This was a public moment, designed to unfold in front of witnesses to ensure that whatever happened next would not remain contained. Deacon understood that, and that understanding made everything more dangerous. Outside, Taylor did not stop walking until the distance between her and the restaurant felt sufficient, though no amount of distance could fully separate her from what had just happened. Her mind replayed the scene in relentless detail, each moment sharpening rather than fading with time. The way the woman had entered, the calm certainty in her voice, the child, the name, Sheila. It all connected too quickly, too cleanly, leaving no room for coincidence. Taylor slowed eventually, her breath uneven, her thoughts racing faster than she could control. This was not just an interruption. It was an attack. Not physical, not immediate, but no less devastating in its impact. It had been designed to strike at the exact point where she had allowed herself to be vulnerable, where she had begun to believe in something new, something fragile. And it had worked. She felt it clearly now, the shift within her, the way hope had been replaced by something heavier, something far more guarded. This was not just about Deacon's past. It was about what that past represented, what it carried with it, and how it continued to shape the present in ways neither of them could fully escape. But even as she processed it, something else began to take shape beneath the surface. Not retreat, not surrender, awareness. Because if this had been orchestrated, if this had been planned, then it meant one thing. This was not over. Back at Il Giardino, the situation had not resolved. It had deepened, expanded, taken on new layers as the initial shock gave way to confrontation. Deacon's focus had shifted from reaction to analysis, his instincts pushing him to look beyond what was being presented to him. The woman's presence, the timing, the connection to Sheila, it all pointed to something larger, something that extended beyond this single moment. And as he stood there, caught between the past he could not change and the present that refused to remain stable, he began to understand that this was not just about a child. It was about control, about narrative, about forcing him into a position where every choice he made would carry consequences he could not predict. The child looked up at him then, her expression curious, unguarded in a way that felt almost out of place within the tension surrounding her. For a brief moment, everything else faded, replaced by the simple, undeniable reality of her presence. Whatever this situation was, whatever it had been designed to accomplish, she was real. And that truth complicated everything in a way Deacon could not ignore.